Gentlemen, are we here?
Yeah, how are you? Are we ready? There he is. Bill, if you're ready, I'm going to get started.
Yes, we are.
Okay, let's do it. I don't have the music. Where's that at? Damn it. Screw it. We'll add it in later. Hey, gang. I'm figuring things out.
Technology.
Yeah, awesome. It is Friday. It is the Lunchtime Happy Hour. Quite possibly the last show as the Lunchtime Happy Hour. I've been working with a consultant for the past week and a half who is advising that because, like, for example, tomorrow this will be on WDJY in Atlanta at 5 in the evening. And then it'll be on again Monday morning. That's not lunchtime.
I mean, it could be technically
Somewhere in the world, right? Isn't that what Jimmy Buffett says?
And or you could just be hungry, you know.
It's lunchtime somewhere. So we've got an extra one. I just got it's sounding okay, so I guess I'm just going to leave him on. For those of you on video, that's Phil. That's the guy that works the board for us in our home terrestrial station, or at least my home terrestrial station, 1490 WWPR. Welcome. He is our resident Trumper.
Oh, sorry, Trumper.
What? Yeah. If you want to admit to it, it's the first step of getting out of the cult.
It is.
Also with us, Matt Deemer from Daily Crypto News.
It is. Mea culpa.
And yeah. And Matt Deemer from Daily Crypto News. And
what up?
The Democratic nominee for Congress in the 7th District of Ohio. We're supposed to start phasing that claim out.
What if I ran as an independent in the same district, but you know, just put it on the ballot? That way, you're.
Yeah. We already have one of those. We don't need any more of you guys. But I think that's an old rule, by the way. I don't think that applies anymore. By the way, I don't know. But anyway, I'm not a lawyer. This is not financial advice.
I am really curious about that rule because you go back to like every election ever, and someone always gets way more coverage. They might not be a direct interview, but like Donald Trump was on every show because he would go on the shows. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right?
I think it was a rule at one point, but I think that was overturned in the 80s. And I think
really, that far?
Yeah, I think whoever's talking about that, because this is AM radio. We have some old school people in AM radio. So
well, he's on AM FM. He's nationally syndicated. The dude knows his stuff, but I'll have to challenge him on that one. Phil, what do you know about that? What we're talking about, by the way, is the consultant that I'm working with to help Yerg's radio, and that's something for the end of the show. Another big announcement. We got another station on the way. Has told me that because we're branding this, and part of the expertise of the panel is that Matt is running for Congress in Ohio and, like all of us, a political junkie. And what he told me is that we actually have to give an equal amount of time to his opponent, a Republican from Ohio, who I have no idea who that is. Obviously, Matt would probably, but Phil, is Matt right? Is that an 80s thing, or is that something we actually have to consider?
I think it's something you should consider, not for the reasons you guys are fun, just so you have someone to torment. You know, that's what we used to do. Happened to us in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take us up in the air. Run for your life. You know, so it made it a little bit more entertaining. So I think if you could find, you know, like me, which is impossible because it's annoying, and just find somebody everybody and put them on there and stuff. You know, at the gym first though. You know, kind of beef yourself up.
I'm actually back in the gym. So yeah, so
but really
Trump,
entertainment is more
through the,
would be more my reason for doing it.
That's not a bad idea. So Trump update. We'll talk about his farting and sleeping, as well as SCOTUS immunity. The Arizona bill. This used to be a conservative state, and this is going back to my claim that I've made earlier on this show that I believe November isn't going to be like a total sweep, but I think it's going to be a strong Democratic victory. And Arizona
in Florida or nationally?
Nationally.
Nationally.
Not in Florida. No, that's going to be a while.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and say I will take that bet.
Yeah. Now, and then finally, college campuses, fire versus free speech. So back to Trump. I saw, and I didn't get a chance to actually bring it up and play it for today, but I saw a YouTube short of some guy who's a comedian, and I don't know whether to believe this or not. So I want to know if you guys saw it too. Some guy that's a comedian also used to work for Trump on The Apprentice was saying that as far back as the 90s, he was soiling himself because of all the drugs that he claimed to never do.
I find that hard to believe. Just
I
based
think it
on
sounds
one
stupid.
Anecdotal person. I mean, that seems like there's no. These are the kind of things where sometimes when I hear these things, I go, okay, why would only one person know about this? Like,
yeah,
you know,
fair question.
But I think it's just also stupid. It's like, honestly, to diss the Democrats here, some Democrats think that some things are so funny and they are not funny, and they try to attack their political opponents, and it's just so stupid and cringe. Like Jim Jordan with the JYM. It's like GYM. I think it's so stupid. I hate it. We can go into Jim Jordan's history and stuff like that. And look, I understand where it comes from, and he should have spoke up and all that stuff, but it's stupid. The small hands, Trump smells, and they had the smelly stuff. It's just so dumb.
Well, yeah, and I love the Trump photo of him drinking a water bottle with two hands.
Okay, well, that's funny.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Or have you seen the one of him, with all the hand gestures, but it's a YouTube channel that makes him play the accordion with all the hand gestures?
That is funny.
That's funny. But what's funny, I had this conversation last night with a friend that was over, a neighbor, and he was talking about, what he was saying is Joe Biden's has no faculties. He's not running things. And what I pointed out to him, I was like, look, you are putting the bar so low. All Joe Biden has to do is complete a sentence and walk down a step or whatever to get over that bar. And the Democrats do the same thing with Trump. They say, oh, he soils his pants or he falls asleep all the time or whatever. So then if he's at a rally and he seems energetic, it's like, no, he's doing fine. So keep lowering the bar, and it's just kind of stupid, I think.
I don't think it's just lowering the bar. I just think that they're trying to find a way to attack people, and I think it's just people that are just not really good at marketing and being creative gets this one thing that catches on, and it's just cringe. It's just like this weird kind of like PG, borderline G kind of like diss track that they're trying to play, and it's like, we are way past that. I don't know if you've been watching politics these days, but you got to go PG-13 and get really hard in the paint with it. Like, come on.
Yeah,
you can't just call somebody a doo-doo head. That's basically what they're saying. It's like, you're a doo-doo head.
I think there's a little bit of since people don't seem to care about issues anymore, they're having to just attack these asinine things because
that's what's sad.
If you attack Joe Biden on his position on forgiving student loans, no one cares. They just tune out immediately, and you could make fun of that or something. Well, and I just read a political article this morning talking about how late night just refuses to go after Biden for anything, make fun of him for anything, which is hilarious to me because I'm like, there is a lot you can make fun of Joe Biden for, even if you like the guy.
But here's the thing about Joe Biden is that he'll go with it.
Well, I mean,
they just had the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday. I'm just going to say it in this type of plain English. He busted his own balls.
Yeah, but that's ridiculous. Come on, he gets such a pass. This is first of all, the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Oh yeah,
is a sham. I hate it. I don't like that the press is this cozy with the White House. I think that's a problem.
But they got one for Congress too.
I don't like it at all. I think the press's job is to hold Congress and the president and all of our elected leaders and bureaucracy accountable. You can't do that if you're cozying up with them, having a fancy dinner, and patting yourself on the back for doing what? I mean, the press is doing arguably a worse job than they ever have in the history of this country, and they're patting themselves on the back like they're the heroes.
That's a fair complaint. But to answer your question, I've actually been to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. In fact, my favorite one was when Obama was busting on Trump, oddly enough, and he was talking about the Celebrity Apprentice and firing Gary Busey, and then he just turns and looks at the rest of turns away from the mic a little bit and just says, "And these are the things I worry about at night." As president, firing Gary Busey versus, say, for example, giving the okay to go get Osama bin Laden.
Sure.
You remember that very following Monday, because my partner and I were, and when I say partner, I mean the other intelligence agent. I know, Phil, you said before that's a contradiction. But the other intelligence agent that was with me, we turned and looked at each other and pointed and said, "There's a message there." And we went back to the rest of the night.
Wow.
Monday comes along.
What year was this? I forget
the year, but it was April 30th into May 2nd.
Yeah.
Because Monday, May 2nd, is when Obama came on national TV and said, "We got him."
Yeah.
And so I called my buddy, and he says, "Yergs, that was the message." If you do the math and realize that Pakistan, where he was, is halfway around the world, and the time zones and what have you, and they're actually an extra half hour ahead, by the way, he would have given the order right before or right after the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
No.
Oh, absolutely. I confirmed that, actually.
But I thought I thought he came on TV late at night. I thought he broke in at like 9 p.m.
After they got him.
Our time, but it was all done by then.
Well, no, but it happened within the hour. It happened within hours of him coming on.
No, it was earlier that day.
I'm confused about
because what he told us in that meeting, what he told us on TV was that he's already at sea. He was already buried at sea. All of it's done. The guys are back. It's over. There's no opportunity for you to object now. It's done. And so I talked to some Navy SEALs that I knew, and they said they're not just going to get out of bed someday and go do that. Even them, they're going to rehearse it. And with the way the one helicopter went down, they're glad they did.
Yeah.
Of course.
So they had some time to do that, which means Saturday, when he cracked that joke, he knew something about that going to happen.
Oh, of course. I bet he gave the order that day or so, and a couple of days. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So,
but really quick, go back to the Correspondents' Dinner. Blake, you're 100%.
Remember, Biden was against it.
Show a little bit coziness.
It's true, he was. Which I mean, reasonable people, I think, can be. I think that, like, I've heard good arguments for you should have captured and arrested instead of killed, but I also I tend to lean towards the side that says that would have been even more dangerous to try to do. In that operation,
he was treated with respect. When he was killed, he was given a Muslim burial at sea, and within the time frame of Muslim law.
And nobody thought about bringing him here and a wall,
because that would martyr him.
About bringing him to New York and putting him on the stand.
I think there's probably
martyr him.
I think there's probably a significant danger in that too. I mean, I think if you bring him back to the United States for a trial.
Nobody thought about that.
What happens if there are, Al Qaeda cells in the United States that have a game plan for if that happens?
Yes.
What, killing him or what?
Phil, I don't know if you can tell, but you're on a delay.
He's on a 5-second delay. I've been timing him.
Yeah. We've got to fix that so we can have you on again, and figure out what was.
Fine.
But anyway,
Okay, we gotta tell Phil to go bye because this is making for very bad radio.
Yeah.
Bye, Phil.
Sorry, Phil. We'll get you on not a delay sometime.
Yeah, so somebody type that into the chat to him so he can see that.
I already said that.
Anyway, so yeah, White House Correspondents' Dinner, how the hell we got on that, but they actually the purpose of that, they actually give scholarships to journalist students. And like to this date, they've given like X point millions of dollars in scholarships. And they do pat themselves on the back a little bit, actually a lot.
Yeah,
so
I just think they think they're heroes, and I think they're in the past, but maybe and some of them are, but like, yeah, come on, it's a little too self-congratulatory.
But by the way, can we just go back for a second and just acknowledge that Phil is a psycho?
On what?
Like what is he talking about? Bringing Osama bin Laden back to the Twin Towers and stringing him up on a string in the middle of a court somewhere and hanging? Like, what? Are you a psycho, bro? Are you a psycho? Like, how is that a good idea? Phil, I'm sorry, man. You could come in the chat if you want, but that's psycho.
Go into the, while we're talking about that. 1-888-88 Yergs. If you think Phil is a good idea that we bring Obama, or that Obama bring bin Laden back, or if you think it was a better idea that he was buried at sea, you can also do that in the chat.
I also don't think he should have been buried at sea, though.
Well, but that's a Muslim thing, right? I mean, that is one of the ways
that was, and that's what I think was genius, was that they treated him fairly.
Okay, fair enough.
Terms.
Now, are you going with the conspiracy route?
Yes, I am going with the conspiracy route.
It gives to, yeah. I mean, I do wish they would have maybe. Well, it just gives. Anytime you're like, well, we disposed of the body in the sea, it's a little bit like, well, you can't prove that you did that. I mean, I think it's ridiculous to have the conspiracy theory that, like, because if we had pretended to kill Osama bin Laden and he was still alive, don't you think he would have come out and been like, yo, I'm right over here. They didn't kill me.
Well, I mean, in all fairness,
that all the time.
In all fairness,
I mean, that throughout all history.
In all fairness, Elvis is still alive. Michael Jackson is still alive. Hitler was in Argentina.
Yeah, right. Everyone's still alive, right? Tupac. Not still alive. They've actually finally found his killer, which is crazy,
right?
You know, but you know, there's always that conspiracy theory, and so it might have been nice to be able to nip that, but I don't know that there's any. You're right. There's no way that you could prevent that from happening. There's people that think the world is flat, so I don't think that we're gonna be able to convince them that we killed Osama bin Laden.
True that. So Trump is farting in court. He's sleeping in court. And he's still calling Joe Sleepy Joe. Wednesday, he was in Wisconsin and was so incoherent.
Yeah.
Fox News had to cut. They said, no, we're not gonna put this on.
I so don't care about this.
But here's the thing.
So don't care about this. Somebody convince me why I should actually care about this.
Because I don't think either one of these
guys, the one saying that Biden is the incompetent one.
They're both incompetent yergs. Neither one of them can talk without a teleprompter and make any sense. It's word salad. It's nonsense.
That's a standard thing.
No, freaking Joe Biden read the word pause, exit stage right the other day off the teleprompter.
Look,
okay?
Stop.
He's doing that to be funny. I promise you, he's doing that to be funny.
He's not doing it to be funny.
No, he's not doing that to be funny, dude.
But one of these guys are competent.
Guys, we literally have podcasts for a living, and if you can just tape and how many times you make mistakes throughout the day, and people are doing this live all the time.
Yeah.
Give everybody a little grace when they're reading teleprompters, when they're doing live stuff, when they're talking. They mess up all the time. If it was me up there or somebody who's younger, would mess up all the time. This is just stupid. It's non-news. This is why we're not talking about policy, because we're talking about bullshit like this.
No. But hold on. But listen. Gaffes are one thing. Biden's always been a gaffe machine. So was George W. Bush, and they made fun of him for it all the time. And I think it's fair.
But George W. Bush was another one who accelerated it.
But my point is that gaffes are one
Bush
thing.
Was hilarious.
And not being able to string together a thought is another thing. And I don't think I watch these things where if you watch, or the one I think is the most kind of egregious one lately was, because the rallies are kind of the same thing over and over again, but Trump was on CNBC, I don't know, last month or whatever, and they asked him something and he rambled for 4 minutes and no one could make any sense of what he was saying. He said inflation's at 50%. I think the real number is 50%. None of it based in fact. And it wasn't like he was lying because that's what he does. This was just word salad nonsense. And Joe Biden's the same way if you don't give him a script. And that concerns me that they can't even articulate what they're trying to say. And I don't think they either one of them have any kind of grounds in reality either, because they're both making up numbers all the time. Joe Biden makes up parts of his history all the time, which either means he's lying about it or it means he doesn't remember correctly or he's mistaken. I think all of that is a problem. And I think it's crazy that we don't think that's a bigger problem that neither one of these guys can string together a paragraph that is coherent.
We're going to make this a topic soon enough, because there's a bunch of things I've got that can show, yeah, Joe Biden's an 81-year-old man who still rides a bike, who falls off a bike and's got the balls to get back up on it. Trump sits on a golf cart and tips the thing.
Yeah, but I think neither one is more. I don't think one is more fit than the other. Why can't
this is so stupid?
Pick someone else.
Can I clock out and come back when we can talk about something actually serious?
Well, we're actually going to do that right now.
This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard on this show, Jurgs.
But Matt,
like we're talking about somebody being able to ride a bike. We're talking about somebody falling asleep or saying pause at the end. This is absurd that this is what we're talking about when our political discourse. When we have protests in college campuses, we're talking about changing the laws of.
Quit bitching. Let me get to it.
Let's get to it. Let's get to it, guys.
That's fine. I mean, I'm just saying that I don't. You're right. I don't care about the falling asleep. I don't care about the.
Like, I'm going to mute you.
What? That's fine.
We're getting to it. Stop bitching. All right. So, I still wanted to talk about SCOTUS for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's a political issue. So we'll get back on an actual topic. Supreme Court has been hearing the arguments for Trump's immunity. And the one scary thing to the Trump campaign, Trump administration, etc., Trump camp, Trump train, was that never before, and I said it, never before this segment or this portion of this whole process have I heard the word coup until I've heard it mentioned by Supreme Court justices that he appointed.
Yeah, because they're giving hypothetical situations, because they're trying to figure out what the scope of the government's saying and what's the scope of the defense of Trump is saying. And so they're throwing out all sorts of hypotheticals, and some of them are interesting, and a lot of them are actually really interesting in historical context too of other presidents, because they're bringing up a lot of things that past presidents have done.
Especially Nixon.
Could we charge that? Well, not even in the FDR. It's like, could we charge him with a federal crime after, for interning Japanese people? It's tricky. I mean, it's interesting for sure.
Right. Where do you think it's going to go? Is he going to have immunity?
I mean, I listen to a legal podcast that I think is pretty smart to listen to, called Advisory Opinions, a couple lawyers, and so they're going to be able to get into the weeds of all the stuff that I don't, because I'm not a lawyer. They're much more educated than I am, and I think they're really smart people, and very nuanced and into the weeds of the stuff. It's very nerdy. I mean, let's not pretend it's not. It's a legal podcast, but they're not in total agreement, the two hosts of it, but I think that we're definitely going to get a 9-0 decision. I don't think that this is going to be one of those things we're going to have a split thing, much like the other ones that have involved any of this kind of election stuff or Trump stuff. I think what they're trying to figure out how to do is punt on it as much as possible, but also at the same time, because you can hear this in the oral argument and in the justices' kind of responses, because they're trying
questioning.
They're pushing back on both sides. They're literally going, okay, well, if you're saying that's illegal, because really what this all gets down to, the simplest explanation that I think that we can try to put it in a box is the government's trying to say, we're trying to decide if the president can be held liable criminally for acts he did while he was president. We already have established he cannot be held liable while he is president, because there'd be also
first,
because he's the head of the executive branch, and the executive branch is the people who would be prosecuting. That obviously doesn't work out right. So we're saying after a president leaves, we've already established that that's the case. That is law. Okay. The thing that they're trying to figure out is what are the things that are official acts versus what are things that are not official acts, and can we charge him with a crime that was connected to an official act? And the famous sort of example, which I think got a little bit overblown and taken out of context from Trump's defense is that they said they think that you would be able to be immune from something like, giving an order to SEAL Team 6 to assassinate someone. So,
which is crazy.
Well, but is it? Because
yes, it's crazy.
Hold on.
Well,
here's the argument. The argument is that that's an official act. Now, if Trump hired
it's murder.
No, hold on. Listen to me. I promise. I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong.
I listened to it. I saw it live.
I know, but I'm saying this is what they're trying to figure out. The thing is, they're trying to differentiate between if Trump hires a hitman to kill someone while he's the president versus giving an order to SEAL Team 6, because it's
right. This is why Supreme Court justices, 1, need to have term limits, and 2, need to have actual experience.
No. Hold on, I
need to have actual experience on the bench, because this is stupid.
They all
guys, I haven't said anything for 7 minutes.
Matt, you're up.
I haven't said anything for 7 minutes now because York told me that he's gonna cut my mic if I don't shut up. I'm back.
I'm not doing that.
I don't know, York. You're very cranky there. You're scary. I don't know, but look.
I love you. You just made my voice crack. Did you hear that? I love you. You're not in danger.
Yeah, yours. I'm trying to make a point here. Would you please, sir? Anyway, so no, Blake, I understand what you're trying to say here. Is when you're trying to find the roles of a branch or roles of anybody that's an elected official, you have to find the guardrails, find the extremes. And so I don't think that the Supreme Court is out of order by saying SEAL Team 6 or a coup or these extremes on both sides of how to figure out and define the roles of the executive branch. And that's all they're trying to do is trying to figure out, like, hey, if you get immunity, what does that really mean? And how extreme does that go? And if you don't ask these questions, then we don't have that border of saying, like, okay, everything is cool up until that point, and if they do allow that,
happen in multiple countries. I mean, this happens all the time with dictators. They break
exactly. And so what does it mean for the United States Constitution and the executive branch? You have to answer that question.
But those dictators are above the law.
Well, only, but they weren't at some point sometimes. You know what I mean?
So let me throw back with this hypothetical then. Trump does get SEAL Team 6 back in 2019 to whack Biden. How is Biden now no longer being protected by the Constitution that is designed to protect him and every other citizen? If it's okay for the president to whack him, isn't the Constitution protecting citizens from the government?
Yeah. So what the finished part of me bringing up that point was to say that what this is probably going to end in is some sort of qualified immunity for presidents, is that they're going to say, if it's part of your job description, so the things that the Constitution lays out and Congress has laid out, that these are the president's jobs, that he probably can't be. So the example that they gave on the show was if a probate judge did a murder trial, he's not covered under qualified immunity because that's not part of his job. He can't do a murder trial because he's a probate judge. And that was their example of, like, yeah, he's like technically a judge, but he's not that kind of judge. So that's outside of his purview. And so he could be charged for that kind of thing. And I think in the case of the Trump kind of speculation of if he hired someone, the problem with the Justice Department right now is they're trying to prove that Trump did something illegal without opening up all sorts of ways to, for example, prosecute Barack Obama for killing American citizens with a drone strike. Because what's the difference between those two things? They're official acts. They killed American citizens. What would be the difference and so what they're going to try to do is say there has to be some sort of motivation behind it. They're probably going to say that, for example, the thing that they're trying to go after Trump right now, for example, going after Georgia's governor to try to sue the state of Georgia.
Oh, he's cool.
Right. But that's not in the president's purview, right? That's not the president's job is not to sue states. That's not in his job description at all. And so they would say that would not be qualified. But the thing is, we do have to draw lines somewhere of, like, the presidents they do kill people. Like, that is absolutely part of the job description.
They don't kill Americans. That's
Barack Obama did. So do you think he should be prosecuted for it?
I don't know, but we spy on Americans without warrants.
What Americans did he kill? People who already renounced their citizenship and were part of ISIL?
Doesn't matter. They are American citizens, and he drone strike them. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that it happened. And if you say Trump can't do official acts that are illegal. That's illegal. The president killed American citizens on purpose with a strike. So I'm not saying Barack Obama should be prosecuted for that, but I'm saying they're trying to thread this needle to get Trump without getting any past presidents, because you get into like, could we prosecute FDR if he hadn't died in office for interning Japanese citizens? Because these weren't Japanese foreign nationals, by the way. These were citizens, like natural born citizens of the United States, right? So there's all sorts of things that happen. And what they're probably going to come through, like some sort of standard that says, it has to be an official act, A, and B, it has to be something that didn't have some sort of other motivation. For example, it's not, the problem is the state or the Justice Department is trying to say that part of the indictment, I think this is really where they go off the rails. They included the part where he was trying to replace his attorney general. That is absolutely in the president's job description to replace.
Not when the attorney general was given an illegal order.
It doesn't matter. It's in his job description. It is in his.
No,
it's his job. It is, and that I think if they didn't include that, they'd be in the clear. But they included that, and I think it muddies up the water because, of course, it was for political reasons. But like Joe Biden's doing the same thing. Do you think his student loan forgiveness is a policy thing, or do you think it's to get reelected? So we get into this slippery slope of. You can't say the motivation is illegal because they were trying to get reelected for political reasons. I think that's where the government's gone wrong on this. I'm not saying Trump's immune. I'm not saying he's not immune. I'm saying that I think the court will come back and say there's some sort of qualified immunity and they will qualify it somehow.
Never happen.
What never happened?
Matt, I'll let you give a final and then I'll tell you why it won't ever happen.
I have nothing. Go for it.
If if the court gives any level of immunity that's going to allow him to just whack somebody or force somebody out, like members of the court, they will make themselves irrelevant. And no court is ever going to do that.
That's not in his job to fire Supreme Court justices.
It's in his job to force them out because that's happened too.
No, it is not. It is not in his job to force people out. That's Congress's job. They can impeach and remove Supreme Court justices. The president has no authority to remove Supreme Court justices by the Constitution. He has authority to appoint them. He does not.
I'm not talking about authority. I'm talking about what happens.
That's what I'm saying. The qualified immunity thing is going to say if this is in the president's job description via the Constitution or Congress's, their own laws that they say that the executive branch gets to do, they're not going to be able to prosecute him for that stuff. They will be able to prosecute him for things like going to Georgia and trying to sue them to overturn an election in Georgia because that's not in the president's job description. But I do think we're going to see immunity from any kind of official acts, even if they had bad intentions.
Doubt it.
Well, because I promise you, if that happens and Trump gets reelected, the Justice Department's going to go after Barack Obama for that kind of stuff, and they're going to go after Joe Biden for something too. And I think we open a whole can of worms.
Who's the one? And tell me, who's the one bitching about weaponizing the Justice Department?
No, I agree. I
who's going to be doing it?
Agree that Trump will absolutely weaponize the Justice Department, but that's why you've got to really thread a needle here. If you're trying to get Trump on this, he's going to use it, and you're going to say it's law. That's a problem.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. If I was going to talk about Arizona, but we got to take a break shortly. In fact, we'll probably do that first. And I both of you bring up a really good point that a bigger thing, and we can spend the rest of the day talking about that, is the college campuses and what's been going on there. I think the AP tabulated something more than 2,000 or 3,000 arrests nationwide.
Yeah, I think it's about 2.
So, yeah, and, what's the difference between, with regards to their demos, what's the difference between what they're doing and free speech? Is there one? So, 1490 WWPR, 99.1 WDJY, Yerg's Radio, plus one more station. We'll talk about that after these words. Smell nasty. Do you want to freshen it up a little bit? Go to aromabypeter.com. Check out all of Peter's candles. It's what we burn here in Studio Yerg's. I'm burning right now leather scented candle. That's right, leather scented. So go to aromabypeter.com/Yerg's and check out his candles today.
I'm Jane Stahl, retired English teacher, and with my BFF, Susan Bebeck, we manage Studio B Fine Art Gallery in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. We showcase the art of hundreds of local artists, publish books of the poetry, prose, and art of local writers, offer classes, art parties, workshops, discussion groups, cater dinners. We've even hosted a wedding. And we're here to be the go-to place for friendship, learning, and fun in our community. Virtual tours of our exhibits are available right here on Yerg's Radio. Let us introduce you to some amazing art and artists.
Check out Jane Stahl and everyone at Studio B in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. Please visit our YouTube channel, Talk TV 24. How's your website doing? I'll tell you how mine's doing. It's awesome. Yergs.com is gotta be the best website for anybody in podcasting or any sort of broadcast solo journalist like me. How did I get that? Limit Break Digital. Limit Break Digital did my website with Yergs.com. They did YergerGroup.com. They take care of my marketing, my branding, and help me get the message out to you. Go to limitbreakdigital.com/Yergs for 10% off your next project. That's a $3,000 site, Yergs.com. And you can get 10% off that by just going to limitbreakdigital.com/Yergs today. Talk to Jay. That's my guy. We all got a guy, and Jay's mine. limitbreakdigital.com. Hey gang, it's Yergs. Right now, our country is about to embark on yet another controversial presidential election. I have an actual question, legitimate question, as a political scientist and historian by education. If you are a Trump supporter, I want to hear from you. I want to know what your appeal to Donald Trump is at this time. Please email me news, N-E-W-Z, at yergs.com. News, N-E-W-Z, at YERGZ.com. Thanks. Participants must be willing to provide their contact information, answer a series of questions, and then have their first name broadcast over the radio and social media relevant to Up the Middle. Hi, we're back. I think there was a kind of a quick 10 seconds. Sorry.
I made it back with my water.
You got it? Yeah.
Is that a Stanley Cup? Everybody been talking about these days.
No, it's a Simple Modern Cup. It's a local Oklahoma company, and it's Avs because we've made it out of the first round of the playoffs, and
we did not. We did not. Oh crap! Sorry.
I'm a baseball fan, guys. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we did not. The Cats beat the Bolts.
Cats?
Yeah.
Panthers.
The Bolts?
Florida Panthers.
Who are these people?
Tampa Bay Lightning. So I was going to talk about the Arizona bill, but we got talking about farting and all kinds of other stuff. So,
I mean, the Arizona bill is pretty much like it's a 5-second thing. It's that they repealed the 1800 law, and now it's a 15-week ban, which is where 58% of the country says we should be. So, it worked itself out.
Exactly. So the other thing, I just, my point about talking about that today, though, is that until more recently, Arizona was a very conservative state and has turned pretty blue.
Well, but I mean, Trump's got it by 9 points right now, so it's kind of it's a weird state for sure. I think
he talked about how polls go, though.
Yeah, but I think what mostly we're seeing reflected is that the chaos of the Arizona GOP is causing them problems. I think it's generally red. They are. Well, but I mean, Arizona one takes like the cake on. Like, it's pretty chaotic nationwide, but Arizona is like in absolute shambles. You've got people, it's crazy.
Yeah. So college campuses, as everybody knows, unless you live under a rock, have been having some serious demonstrations over the past month or so, to a point where, yes, they got violent. Columbia lost control of one of their buildings, and the demonstrators, the terrorists, because I don't sugarcoat, renamed it after some Palestinian kid that was killed by the Israelis. At what point do these demonstrations on campus, in a city park, wherever go from freedom of speech to, I'll just leave it general and say any level of breaking the law.
Columbia is a
Can
weird
I stop?
example. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead. I
Can
was
I
going to
start?
go with you, but you were cleaning up before, just off camera there.
I was on camera actually.
Yeah.
But cleaning up. Jeez. Look, here's my first issue about this is that freedom of speech is very important and protest is very important. And it seems as though there's a lot of special interest groups that are coming into not only our politics and our Congress and when it comes to super PACs and so on and so forth, but they also move into escalate these protests in ways that force local law enforcement and people to take a stand that is the opposite of freedom of speech. And so, freedom of speech and our political process, therefore eroding the ability for this process to happen. And I want to just make a note that a lot of times when we see these things escalate, there are people that are literally put there to do that, to stop this process, and also put forward different agendas on different sides of the political spectrum. And so I want to just be cautious about when we say that.
And
Hey,
to be clear on both sides of the political
on
spectrum.
absolutely both sides, on
Yeah.
absolutely both sides, to escalate different things so that there has to be an action to stop or pass certain legislation to curb the speech that's happening now. And I just want to be cautious that when we do talk about this moving forward, that we remember that upholding the Constitution is the number one thing, and that we can't erode the Constitution or the freedom of speech and our rights of a democracy because of these escalations, when we also know that this could be planted there as well. And so just anyway, Blake, whatever you want to say, go for it.
Well, I was going to say Columbia is interesting because it's a private university, so they can make their own rules, whatever. Free speech does not actually, they don't have, like, students don't have a free speech right to protest on the quad if the school doesn't want them to. Columbia is different than, for example, University of Texas, though, because that's a public school.
That's a state school.
There are different rules for these different schools. So Columbia is where most of this started and obviously spread all over the country. But like, you're going to have a different situation at UCLA than you do at Columbia because UCLA is not private. And so I think the thing about Columbia specifically, just because that's where this started and that's where most of the news has been, and that's where, like I said, they took over that hall, Yergs and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the problem with the private universities specifically is that they have different rules for different groups of people, and it's pretty obvious that that's the case, because if you are, I assume, because I'm going to be that guy, that most of the people that are protesting are peaceful. I'm going to assume that they're, but this mostly peaceful stuff, the second someone comes in, whether they're with your group or not, because the problem in all these situations is that it's not just the students that got involved. It's not just the students that broke into that hall. It's people sometimes from out of state that come to the protest. I don't think it's outside agitators in the sense that, like, this is not Republican operations that are sending people in to smash stuff. This is like, there were people waving Hamas flags. There were people, they hung up a sign that said Intifada, globalize the Intifada on so the people that organized and broke into that building were calling for the extermination of Jews. And I don't believe for a second that Columbia University would have allowed that if it was saying that for Black people, for example. And so I think they have a double standard of what they constitute is free speech and what's not. And I think the problem that Columbia is going to face specifically is that I think they're going to get sued by other students, because if there were other groups that wanted to protest, for example, basically the law says you can, even on public universities, you can limit the scope of protests. So you can say, like, you can do it in the quad, you can do it in these, and the time and the place.
We used to do that. The Secret Service used to have demonstration areas until the ACLU sued against that and won.
Right. And that's the reason they won. I don't know in that specific case, but they've won, not the ACLU, but like FIRE, for example, is the organization that an organization that does a lot of free speech stuff. Now the ACLU has just abandoned that part of their job, now that they're just strictly a left-wing Democratic, whatever the issue is they go for. But FIRE is the one that really is like, look, we don't take positions on what the speech is. We just say we are for pro-speech and free speech. And so what they've sued colleges for in the past is, you can't say it's a 10-foot area a mile from campus. That's not, or on the edge of campus. Like, that's not good enough. It's got to be large. So these things have come under scrutiny. And most of them have not even made it to court because they just settle. They go, you're right. And so they've got to limit the scope, they've got to limit the time and all that kind of stuff. They can do that. That's totally fine. But they cannot give unequal treatment to the different voices and what they're saying. So if you say political speech is okay on the campus, you have to allow all political speech. Columbia could say we don't allow any political speech, and that would be okay because they're a private university. So I think they're going to get sued by the students because their class got disrupted. So they're going to say that university did not do their job. It's a contractual obligation.
Or whatever it is, $60,000 a year or whatever.
$50,000 a year, and they're like, we're canceling classes because this happens. I think you're going to see suing from Jewish students that didn't.
I think that'd be called force majeure. Actually, I don't think that's going to. Yeah.
And then I think that you're going to get sued by Jewish students that didn't feel safe. There was a janitor that was detained inside of that building and they wouldn't let him leave. I think they could be sued by that. I mean, his safety was coming there, and he's just a staff member. He's just a janitor that's there in the building at the time.
That's my point, is that, and why I titled this section "Fire versus Free Speech."
Yeah.
If you're out in the quad or whatever part of the park of the campus where you're visible, you're being seen and obviously being heard, and you're disrupting the class that are in the windows right over there because you're that loud. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But when you engage in different activities like starting fires, muscling, and in this case, pro-Palestinian, keeping Jewish students from getting to class.
Yeah.
Anything physical, anything against community standards that are, and I don't mean like dropping the F-bomb. I mean like putting people in danger, like that janitor, like those students who were literally pushed away from going to class. And yeah, Matt's texting us there saying he lives in Ohio, Kent State.
Yeah.
Is that where you were going, Matt?
I was answering somebody in the comments here. So yeah.
Oh, you put it in the wrong comments then.
I don't know where I don't know how to do this, dude.
I think you're right, Yergs, though. It's like that's where the university has to set those rules and then enforce them. And the problem is they didn't enforce their rules at Columbia and some of these other universities. And there are some universities that did, like University of Florida said, we're not a nanny for these kids. We're going to tell them what the rules are, and if they break the rules, they'll be suspended. Like,
can we stop calling them kids? They're not kids.
You're right. That's fair. They're not.
They're adults.
They're adults. You're right. You're right.
They're no, Yergs. No, we're going to change the age of being an adult.
You're right. They're adults. Matt, one point you brought up that I think is really important is that, well, maybe not important, but I want to talk about is you say protests are important. And I agree that some have been, but a protest happening doesn't mean it's important. Like, does that make sense? Like, I think
it's important to the people protesting.
Well, no, I'm saying it doesn't. Why are they protesting at Columbia in the first place? What is, like, they want them to divest any interest from any Israeli company, period, or any company that does business in Israel. And at Northwestern, I think it was, they demanded, this is so freaking stupid, guys. They didn't want a hummus brand that was sold in the cafeteria to be sold because it's a Jewish company and an Israeli company. That to me is like so silly, right? I mean, like that's, and so Colombia has no control over a ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. The protests that made a difference in this country were obviously the civil rights ones. And what they did in the civil rights era.
I mean, I know some black people that don't have a great life.
Yeah, but my point is what they did was they said, we are going to stand up to what we think is wrong, and we're going to break the law where we think those laws are unjust. And we are also going to, part of it is that you have to deal with the consequences. People forget that, they got arrested and thrown in jail. I think unjustifiably, obviously, and they got fire hoses turned on them, but they were so strict about, we are going to be peaceful. We are not going to be the agitators, and we are going to, and it changed hearts and minds in America because people saw people that just peacefully marching, they were getting hosed down by fire hoses, and it turned the tide on the hearts and minds in America. So, these kids, these students are not willing to live with the consequences. They want to like cosplay, but not actually get suspended. They want all the demands of like,
I 100% agree with you. They're not. First of all, can we stop calling them kids? They're not kids.
That's what I did. I corrected myself.
They're
students.
Stop. Okay, so
I won't stop that. For the record,
whatever.
I'm not going to stop that, but go ahead.
Well, because that's the thing. Are we going to talk about consequences? If we keep calling them kids, that means the consequences are different. You're treated as a juvenile or you're not. I mean, so these are actions that they do have to. And here's the thing. Is that there has to be consequences to these actions, or the actions that they're having does not have any meaning to them. That's what makes the actions important, is going out there to protest, to get arrested, and to see that the pushback of some kind of authority is going to affect your life when it comes to your grades, your scholarships, that is the thing that you're doing for the voice you're trying to have. And so there has to be consequences to this, or else it's meaningless, right? But I agree that there is. Here's the sad thing, I think, is that we have turned advocating. First of all, I 100% agree with you, Blake, that there isn't a strong enough leader and a strong enough leadership or a coalition to actually give guidance to these people to actually have a meaningful protest. It's just like all over the place and nobody knows what's going on. But I did want to say, like, there are agitators going out there to really ruin it for everybody. And that's why everything's coming in. Second of all, is I don't understand why the escalation is part of the policing. The escalation is part of, the crackdown of it. If everybody kind of ignored it when it was just a encampment and just everybody said, okay, we're just going to go on our days, I think that wouldn't have escalated. So escalation was had there.
That wasn't the police's fault. That was Columbia's fault for not enforcing their rule that they couldn't camp there.
They also could have ignored it too. And I think that if there was no reaction, it's kind of like if there's somebody's doing something and there's no reaction to it, then they just stop doing it. It's kind of like somebody's like talking your ear off and you just kind of ignore them. They stop talking and they walk away. And it's just like, yeah, why were you here anyway? So anyway, but wait. Let me just finish this. Just give me a second. Last point I want to say is that, is that I think it's really, really sad. First of all, there is anti-Semitic things going on there. And if you put any other class of person in these kind of like, in this protest methods, then we would also say like, well, this is a little extreme. But I think it's a real big shame that we're turning something like protesting against tens of thousands of people dying and women and children and so on and so forth, and war in general or violence in general. And people want to be part of an institution or part of things that does not have certain investments and how their money is being spent, their tuition money, that is being kind of like demonized, like it's not your problem. It absolutely is your problem. Like if I'm if I'm going to a university and they are actually buying bonds or investing in companies or investing in military contracts or what have you, that is exactly what we want to know. And I think that it's a shame that we are taking that like it's none of your business. It's absolutely your business. And I was just watching this one history thing just a minute ago by Malcolm Gladwell about how Harvard University was developing napalm. And napalm that was being used, in Japan and in Vietnam and so forth, that came from development of Harvard. I mean, look, do you really want? I think that we can't not have that conversation like saying like my money and my tuition and my involvement with this is going to places I don't want to, and to say that we should be disconnected and it's not your problem as a student, just go there, shut up and take your classes and get your education.
That's not what I'm
absolutely
saying.
Not right.
I know, but hold on, they were not.
Yeah, I'm not saying that either.
Military investments. They were saying
I didn't say that you were saying that, but that is part of the narrative.
I know, but these specific student groups were protesting. They said they want all divestment of anything related to any business that does business in Israel. That is wrong, in my opinion. That is wrong. Okay, and so the underlying tone of their demands is racist, in my opinion, because you're saying everyone in Israel is evil, is what you're saying. You're not. I'm fine with critiquing the Israeli government. I'm fine with that. That happens within Israel too. I'm okay with like saying this was wrong that the government did, but you are now saying you're vilifying an entire country of people that live there, including, by the way, 20% of their population is Arab. So you're doing that too. And if you have those opinions, the second someone shows up waving a Hamas flag or a banner that says globalize the Intifada, you should be the ones that vocally say you are not allowed here. We don't want your voice
1,000%.
But they didn't 1,000%. Do that. And that's my problem with it. I know everyone there is not actually anti-Semitic. I think the problem is that they're getting their news from TikTok. And there was a UC Berkeley professor that did a study. He basically paid a polling firm to poll college students across the country. And we found that like when the polling asked them, okay, are you okay with the phrase from the river to the sea, that Palestine will be free? And 86% of them said yes. Then the polling explained to them what that meant. Like, first of all, 47% of them couldn't name the river and the sea. And then when they actually followed up and said, well, that means that they want to eliminate Israel as a country entirely and all these people wouldn't have somewhere to live. Now, do you agree with the statement? 67% of that group of people that agreed with it initially changed their mind and said, well, actually, maybe not. So I think we're dealing with a lot of ignorance here. But the problem is Ignorance is one thing, but once you're ignorant and calling for violence against millions of people, there's not an
100%.
excuse there for it. And so
Do you have the citations for those statistics? Because we want to put them in the show notes.
Yeah, I will find it. It was I'll find the guy's name. It's UC Berkeley, and he wrote a Washington Post article. I will find the link to the Washington Post article.
Because I mean, the bigger, I think a much more simple, practical standard that we got to, or we talked about earlier, kind of sorta, is the going into the movie theater and shouting fire. What are you doing in the course of this demonstration? Are you making a point? Are you making? Well, that's the classic. That's the usual example.
Yeah, but that's a little misunderstood sometimes too, in the sense that that was brought up as a case of you couldn't potentially do that because it endangers people. The problem here, I don't think, is that the protesters endangered people. I think the university endangered people.
Because the protest, because we've got a quote here, or we've got a comment here. Phil jumped in the comments, and he's absolutely right. Years ago, when I used to protest, we never brought plywood. We never brought all these weapons. Yeah. This is insane what they're allowing to take place in the campuses. And that was my point at the very beginning of this segment, was that you can't allow demonstrators to be violent, to take over buildings, to, like, he's right. They bring plywood to demonstrate. What are you going to Home Depot first?
And if you look at most of the arrests, by the way, to be fair, a lot of them are not students. They are these outside people that Matt's talking about. But furthermore,
let me tell you something about that. Let me jump in. I'll give it back to you in a second, but let me tell you something about that. When I was in the LA office and the BLM riots started taking place, there is that's Wall Street Journal. Okay, cool. Got it. There is a Apple store half a block from my former house, which, as you can probably imagine, got raided. I watched half a dozen white kids at the Black Lives Matter rally drive or walk to their BMWs parked in front of my house with thousands of dollars of Apple computers.
Yeah.
What voice are they trying to create other than their rich ass is getting a computer they can clearly pay for in the first place?
Right, and that's why we have to enforce the laws that say you can't break into an Apple store because you're protesting. This whole weird thing with the left where we're saying violence is a legitimate form of speech, but speech is violence is crazy to me.
Wait. And I think that what we
are push back too.
Okay, well, I don't want to get to the violence thing, but I will say that yes, anti-Semitic things are being said at these rallies. There's definitely racist things that are being said at these rallies, but again, I do think that they're mostly peaceful. And what we're doing, and I think that this is where we're getting into this weird. This is problematic, domino effect of that. There's these outliers that are now going to affect protests and affect our constitutional rights. And because this is where we have, these reactions that are saying now we're going to have to stop the protest or stop the thing because of these. And I think that that's problematic. And so we just got to get back down to what is the thing that we're trying to uphold. And that is the right to protest and demonstrate against certain actions of our government or things that we feel are not right.
It's got to be the key word there,
right?
But again, do we agree or not agree that bad apples spoil the bunch, or that we just remove the bad apple and we still have the bunch?
No, I think you enforce the law against the people that break the law, period. Whether they're
equally
inside, outside, it doesn't matter. The point is what we did was that here's why the problem with protests has happened. I think this is my opinion of it. Black Lives Matter happened, and we immediately skirted all the rules that we said everyone had to follow, including COVID guidelines, because this was a just cause, right? And we let people burn cities down. We let them burn municipalities down, mostly burn down businesses of other minorities, honestly, is what was happening. And we excused it because, their cause is good. No, that was wrong. The second you are not marching peacefully and not, shouting your chants, you can do all that kind of stuff. And I agree that when you take the population of the people that did the right thing, they were more than the people that did the wrong thing, but we still should have enforced the law. That led to January 6th. And then now we've got excuses on that side for that. And I think both are wrong, and we've excused way too much of this.
Yep. All right, gang, we got less than a minute left. We have another station, part of the Yergs network. We were talking about bringing one on for the LGBT community. We've got the actual domain. It is rainbowradio.gay and rainbowradio.lgbt.com was like a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, they cost a lot of money now. You can't find them.
But that's coming. So yeah, where can we find? I think I have that stuff still. Blake can be found at Blake at thehomelessconservative.com. Matt can be found at Daily Crypto News, Matt at dailycryptonews.net, or info at deemerforcongress.com. And you can get me at news, NEWZ, at Yergz, YERGZ.com. I think we're going to end right on time, kind of, sort of. But yeah, gang, spirited show today. Love it.
Me too.
Now I got to find what we used to play ourselves out, and there it is. All right, great show, guys. 1490. Up next is some network programming for 1490 AM on Yergz Radio. It is a replay of the Lunchtime Happy Hour. I don't know if it's going to be this episode. I don't know what's on there, but that's coming up next. We'll see you again next week, 12 noon Eastern. See you then.
Turn up the dial, it's that time again. Lunchtime Happy Hour, the debates begin. Blake, Yergz, and Matt spin tracks and facts on WPR where the spectrum's at. Blake's on the streets with a view so bold. A homeless conservative story's gold. Talks of freedom, dreams in his pack. On the airwaves, he's got no lack. Yergz in the middle, keeps it tight. A moderate voice in the left-right fight. Balancing views with a calm composure. Breaking it down from every exposure. Then there's Matt from the left, he hails. Democrat dreams in his sails. Pushing for change in his every word. On the air, every voice is heard.
Oh,
that's that article. I don't know if it has the stats in it because I'm behind a paywall and can't see it, but that is written by the professor that did the survey, so I'm sure he linked it.
Yeah, it's got something at least close to it.
It's interesting because I just feel like most people are ignorant of the facts, and that's a problem.
Oh, 100%. And that's why, Matt, you bring up a good point. Like,
okay, wait. So let me just emphasize my point really quick.
Out. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me emphasize this point. So recently, and here's why I don't like the whole bad apple spoils the bunch and whatever, because states are passing laws that that prohibits protests of more than 20 people on public lands and stuff like that, and try to restrict these kind of.
Yeah, so
I think that's wrong.
But this is what I'm trying to say is like these incidences allow for escalation to say, and then you get this kind of like following that says, well, they did the bad thing. They didn't follow the rules that could be arbitrary from different institutions or whatever that are placed in there that could have been 100 years old. And then they start enacting new laws that says we're going to restrict it. And that's what I want to stop. And that's what I want to say, calm down. If there are people are breaking windows or being violent, those are the people. But the protest itself is what gets demonized. And that's what I think is wrong. And we get lost in conversation.
But don't you think if we arrested and prosecuted the people that did the illegal stuff more often and more... But the problem is on the Black Lives Matter stuff, there were funds to bail those people out.
Look, I mean, but what about isms? Fine. I'm not saying I don't give a shit. I'm just saying
calling them hostages is wrong. And like the point is like, I think you've got to actually go hammer and tongs after the people that do the illegal thing. That's why I'm okay with all the January 6th prosecution stuff. Cause I'm like, I don't care if you peacefully broke into the Capitol and didn't actually
broke into the Capitol. Right. You put doodle on the walls.
Yeah.
And it was not a tour.
And it's not a tour, and you broke the law, and I don't mind you going to jail for it. Like, because I think we should take very seriously, like, no one should ever do this again. And I think if we did that more often, it would weed out these bad actors, because no one's going to go travel to another state to go break a bunch of windows if they know they're going to get arrested and thrown in jail for it. The problem right now, there's no consequences. These students aren't going to get, they're not going to get suspended. The outside agitators are going to get arrested and released immediately. Because
we don't know that, but
we know it. It's in New York. It's going to
happen. These protests are just happening all over the place too. It's all over.
I know. But the Columbia one specifically, I don't believe these students are going to have any consequences. And I think that that's a problem, is because what it does is like it allows the violence to continue. And I think that when people are worried about violence, they are going to take actions that I think are potentially unconstitutional. For example, saying 20 people only can, like, that's ridiculous. I hope FIRE and these other organizations will fight those kind of things, and they generally are. I don't think it should be left to outside organizations to have to do that, because I wish the government just took this more seriously. But generally, we are fighting against the government, who is always trying to curtail our rights. And I think that's the other thing that I think more people on the left have trouble wrapping their head around, is that like, no, the government are the bad guys always, and all of our rights are negative rights. They don't give us those rights. We have those rights, and it's our job to make sure the government's not encroaching on them. And whereas I think some people get that backwards and think, well, the government gives us these rights. No. We have the rights, and we get to fight back against the government when they sneak into them and try to like curtail them. And like I said, at Columbia, slightly different situation because it's a private school, and they can make whatever rules they want to, but they will get into a Title VI situation if they don't enforce those equally. And I think that Jewish students are going to have a serious case here to say that they're not, because if they try to stage a counter protest on the same quad and Columbia didn't kick the other people off the quad, then they're going to have a problem there, because they're going to say, well, yeah, you said this group could say there's free speech, but this other group couldn't. But it's just going to be civil liability stuff. It's not going to be, it's not going to be the government getting involved and saying someone's First Amendment right was violated. Potentially. I mean, Title VI is kind of the only enforcement, I think, for private schools. But I'm with you, Matt. I don't want to see fewer protests. I just want to see I want to see less chaos at protests. I don't care if it's one guy. I don't care if it's half the crowd. I don't care if it's the whole crowd. January 6th is the whole crowd.
I'm really just really sick of the hypocrisy and all of this shit.
I know,
it's like all of it is doublespeak. All of it is hypocrisy. I mean, just today we're talking about just today I was listening to, I think it was The Daily, and they were talking about the Biden stance about trying to de-escalate what's happening in Israel, Gaza. Meanwhile, we just passed $26 billion to send to them. So it's like we want to talk about ceasefires and de-escalation, but we still pass money to give to them, and it's just hypocrisy. And it's like, where do we put our allegiances and our priorities? And when it comes to the Constitution, it's the same thing. We just have a bunch of doublespeak and hypocrisy. I don't know, man. It's just getting really frustrating. It's really getting frustrating.
Trying to walk a weird line there where he's trying not to alienate the left of his base. I've argued for a long time. I think he's doing the wrong thing, because I think
I absolutely think he's doing the wrong thing. Pick one or the other. Pick it.
Like you can't do your
deal with the consequences.
Say the other thing. You got to pick one. And I honestly think he's losing more people in the middle than he is on the left.
100%.
I was just going to say that. Yep, absolutely.
100%.
These people that are like
whatever he loses from the left extreme, he's going to pick up from the right middle.
Yeah, and especially if you look at like Michigan, as far as swing states go, which is where he has this high Muslim population, where he's worried about losing them that are very pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, and he's worried about losing them. He's closer in Michigan than he is in the other swing states where he's losing independence. I just think that it's bad policy, first of all, but I also think it's like foolish to not think that we can't see him doing both things. It's like, right. and everyone's doing this. It really is not a Joe Biden problem. Donald Trump's doing the same thing with abortion right now. He's trying to have it both ways. He's kind of doing the same thing with Israel a little bit. He's kind of hedging a little bit on it's like he understands that he can't be anti-Ukraine and pro-Israel. It's a little
I'm wondering if this is like the weak men make hard times situation, where we just don't have the right leaders that are going to come out and just do the thing that needs to be done. And look, again, right. I'm not taking a position on which side to be on for the leaders or the people who want this leadership position, but if you're so weak that you can't actually go out there and take a position, and you want the president spot, I'm sorry, this is not going to be good for anybody.
And I'll tell you what's really interesting about it, just like from my point of view, which I realize is very anecdotal. But, when I post stuff that's either, hey, Congress did their job and passed these bills and stuff like that, the interesting thing is I'm getting way more pushback from the right of me on Ukraine funding, obviously, than the left. But what's interesting is that, like, I'm like, can you please explain to me the difference between Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan? Like, I mean, like, please give me the actual like thing that you think one is just and one isn't. And I've not received a good answer yet. Honestly, no one's come back to me.
I'll give you mine.
With a,
I'll give you mine.
Fine. I'd love to hear
it.
Give
you mine.
Heard,
Yeah, Ukraine's bad because it helps. It hurts Russia, who is tight with Trump. That
Oh,
might
you mean
not
that's
sound
their argument? Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And normally it
And
doesn't
they
come in
don't
that
know
form.
that. They don't know that because the other part of it is that they're sheep.
But
Well, it comes in the form.
what is your opinion on the fund? That was actually on our docket, and since we are going over and it's going to be on Jurg's radio anyway,
Yeah.
what is your opinion on all the funding and where it's going? And Jurg's, you can start.
All three. Yeah, we have been the world's police department way before Reagan, who's the one that got shit for it. And I mean, really, we fought the American Civil War with one hand tied behind our back. We're fighting the American Civil War down in the South, and we're entertaining the Russian Navy in New York Harbor. Nobody knows that.
Yeah.
We could have done a lot more to end the Civil War. We are a strong country.
And what does all three mean? I don't understand what all three mean.
Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine funding for all
Ukraine.
three.
Yeah.
Oh, it means you're for them or against them?
I'm for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason is because that billions of dollars is less than 1% of our multi-trillion-dollar budget.
Yeah, it's
talking about lunch money.
Yeah.
But because Marjorie Taylor Greene can make those billions of dollars sound important to people who will never see billions of dollars in their entire community, now it's an issue when in all actuality she's kissing Trump's ass, who is Putin's bitch.
It's also hilarious to me that there's also in this fiscal responsibility situation where people are like, we shouldn't be sending any money to any country before we fix stuff in America. And I think the point I bring up all the time is like, I believe that us funding Ukraine absolutely directly affects Americans for a couple of
100%.
For a couple of reasons. One, we are like 450,000 casualties on the Russian side of this so far. So that's injuries or deaths. Okay, that's
and they're surrendering.
Gigantic number. And we're depleting them militarily, and we're actually getting kind of see that like maybe they're not as strong as we thought they were. And so and if that prevents Russia from going into a NATO nation, which I mean, Putin has absolutely telegraphed he wants to do.
Oh yeah.
Then that's where we got to put boots on the ground and put our actual soldiers in harm's way. And so I want to avoid that if possible. And it is worth spending 175 billion, which is the total of what we spent on Ukraine so far, to prevent boots from having to go fight Russia, in my opinion. Like I think that alone is an American interest directly there, because if they attack a NATO country, we're in. And it's the same with Taiwan, really, is that like we are defending a country, and hopefully what we're doing in Ukraine
that is the Chinese version of Russia.
Trying to think twice about what they do. Now, the news this morning is that intelligence is saying that Russia and China are already potentially working together. Basically, Russia will have China's back if they invade Taiwan. And so, I mean, I think it gets into a really scary World War III situation. And this is not me being hyperbolic, I don't think. If Russia...
Come on, let's rip the Band-Aid off. It's World War III already.
Yeah, I mean, not quite, because it's all proxies.
No, it is not. No,
it's all proxies right now.
But it's all in a more modern world with the social media, with the ability to get troops, anywhere in the world within, 48 to 72 hours. The communication and the interaction is already and has always been global.
No, it's definitely global.
You can no longer really have any sort of military boots on the ground conflict without it having some repercussions globally.
Yeah. And I think that we're getting closer as Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China are working together on all these things. So China is sending stuff to Russia for their Ukraine front. Or they're sending stuff to Iran. Iran is sending stuff to Russia. They're working together already.
That's my other question. If Ukraine is holding its own to some level, with or without our support,
yeah,
the damages that you quoted a minute ago,
yeah,
to the Russians. Do you think the Russians can really afford a two-front war?
No.
By helping China?
But can we?
No.
Is a good question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm worried about that a little bit, because I'm worried about our stockpiles. I'm worried about our defense contract.
We're not even it's not even a two-front at this point. It's more of like a three.
Yeah. But if China invaded Taiwan and we had to defend them, and Russia was helping China in more than a way of just sending weapons, if they actually got their back, then yeah, we're on a multi-front. You're right. It's probably closer to 3 at that point, because Iran's not going to not get involved at that point. I mean, I think the escalation of Iran actually firing stuff from Iran into Israel was an escalation that I don't think is getting enough attention. It didn't get a lot of attention because they failed, but that didn't mean they intended to fail. I think that narrative is absolutely wrong. I don't think they intended to fail. And so, I'm worried about it for sure, but I think that's the reason we got to support all 3. If we don't support Israel, Iran will try to wipe them off the map. Now, I don't think Iran has the capabilities of doing that.
Right.
Yet, but if they get a nuclear weapon, they absolutely can. So, I mean, I think we should be preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and I think we should defend democracies in the middle of areas that hate them, and that's what all 3 are essentially. Fortunately, there's been more progress on Taiwan because we've got Japan and some other places there that are our allies.
Did you guys see this interview? And I think it's very.
Matt, I was going to say, you want to talk up that video you sent me? Are you sending it?
The one just now?
Yeah,
I'm trying to. But you're.
We'll go.
Okay. Did you see this video? I think it's worth a watch. It's Sarah Payne. She's a professor of history and strategy at the Naval War College, and I thought it was very interesting.
I will definitely look at it though.
And basically, she's just
Stalin personally is responsible for these.
Apparently, we're going to listen to it right now. So
it's 2 hours and 42 minutes. So no, we're not. But I'll put.
There's a little dyslexia there. It's 24. That's not 42, but 24. But it's okay, Jurgs.
Yeah, I've been having that actually. That's not a joke.
I have too. So that's why I feel comfortable making fun of you. But no. Yeah. Anyway, long story short is they made it really interesting.
2:24:23.
Gosh darn it! Am I on a delay? Is the microphone working? Can I please finish a sentence?
It's actually 32 seconds. That's why I said 23. Go ahead.
I don't know if I want to anymore. Okay,
no,
I'm gonna try one more time.
I want the summary because I will watch this later, though.
Anyway, long story short is that she was comparing Hitler to Putin in their march, and is how similar it is, and how Hitler, when he took like I can't think of it at the top of my head, like the Czech Republic or whatever it was, and went in, and then how Putin took Crimea. And the Donbass, he's like, that was it. It could have been over, right? And it is done. And basically, Obama gave Putin the W. It's like, fine, you got it. We're gonna leave you alone. But the thing is, he kept on moving in,
which I think was also wrong.
I think it was absolutely wrong.
Wrong or right? Long story short is Putin made a decision, and Putin made a decision to continue to go in, and that decision puts Putin in a very bad situation of not having no way out. Now it's only a move forward. Also, it showed his intentions, and this is basically what he's saying is putting this juxtaposition. Hitler had no way out after he started moving forward. Even though he could have united Germany and however he thought it was supposed to be, and that could have been a W, and everybody would have thought he'd been a great strategic leader. Putin could have done the same thing here and just got the W, but now there's no way forward or no way out for either of them. So they put themselves in a no lose situation where if it's not forward, then politically they're destroyed. Economically, probably sanctions would destroy Russia because now we would probably double down even if they started backing off now. And so the only way forward is to win this for Russia and to expand. Yeah. And so this is a very interesting situation that she juxtaposed with it. And I thought that watch the video. But then I have a question for you really quick is, do you think, and I think this is where we always have to go with this conversation, is if China invaded Taiwan, would you commit American troops to defend Taiwan?
I think there's such an economic problem. That would cause a worldwide economic catastrophe. Catastrophe. And
let's remember something about that economic issue. China's not in good shape right now.
No, they're not.
That is the issue. That's the problem.
We are headed to outdo China economically for the first time since 1976.
Well, and if you look at China's releasing fewer and fewer economic numbers, I mean, it's clear that they're in turmoil, especially if you read the people that pay attention to Chinese economics, and they're going things are not great. We don't know the extent of it because they're lying to us, obviously, but we know when they stop reporting on certain economic factors, that means that they're worried about it too, and they don't want to broadcast that they're worried about it. but it's like, which way do they go? Do they see what's happened in Russia and go, ooh, maybe it's a bad idea if we're suffering economically to invade a country that potentially causes unrest? Because I think at some point Russians in Russia will go, is this worth any of this? Like, we've sent 450,000 people to die or be gravely injured, and it's causing, blood and treasure. And like, for what?
That's happening now.
I
That's
know.
the other thing that the mainstream media.
Yeah, but China has like 1 billion more people than Russia or whatever. And so
more
people to be worried about. I think they're as scared of their people as the people are of them in some degree, because it's not going to take a catalyst. So how do you but it's like, we can't guess what they're going to do, because they're not always rational actors. I don't think Putin is a rational actor. We can't think of him like we think of our leaders or the leader of any like Western country, because what may not make any sense to us strategically, that doesn't mean that's where they're, because they might just be evil. Like, I think that sometimes we forget. I think that we've tried to water down everything that was like, oh, there's no such thing as evil. There absolutely is evil.
Yeah. And that's why that comment is up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Phil has rejoined us, and he says, there is no way that Russia loses to Ukraine. They will bleed their way to victory like they always have. Prove me wrong. Yeah, that's easy, because it's happening. They lost, 450,000 troops. There are troops surrendering to Ukrainian troops. The Russian troops surrendering to Ukraine. That's not being reported. There are riots in Russia right now against the war. That's not being reported.
Especially after that terrorist attack, because they're kind of like, wait a minute, you're not protecting us in the homeland. Like, you literally, all of our resources are going to Ukraine, and meanwhile we get a terrorist attack on our own soil. And I think that's also an interesting, like, the sort of ISIS connection to hating Russia when they're partnering with Iran. I mean, it's very, very, very complicated.
There is no way Putin gets into a two-front war. He can't.
Yeah, but again,
I don't think that he's going to have a.
Let me rephrase that. Yeah. There's no way he survives. There's no way, like you said a moment ago, Blake, about our rationale behind strategy versus his rationale behind ego.
Yeah, because he wants to get the Soviet Union.
Survives a two-front war.
Because he wants the Soviet Union back together again.
Correct.
And that's what he wants. And so you've got to look at that as the motivation, and not rationale or economics or his people or any kind of thing like that. And I think that's what scares me. And so that's why I'm like, a few $100 billion when it's I think the Ukraine is a total of 8% of just our Pentagon budget. And you're right, Jurgs, it's something like less than a percentage of our entire budget. You can't come in here with fiscal hawkness or say, and by the way, the government, I don't think is very good at anything, but they certainly should be able to do two things at the same time, or more than two things. So it's ridiculous when people are like, how you got to solve the border. I'm like, hey, you Republicans had a chance to solve some of the border stuff, and they punted on it because Trump told them to. They could have gotten that in with the Ukraine funding. And so for people, when people come to me and they're like, this is ridiculous, we shouldn't be spending money in Ukraine when we aren't securing our own borders, I'm like, that's on Republicans and no one else, because they had Democrats by the balls on that thing. They knew they could get border stuff passed, and it was going to happen.
And they didn't, because
Trump came in and said, don't do it, because I don't want the border to get better during an election year. And that's what the problem is. And that really bothers me, because that's actually
100%.
affecting real lives in the United States.
Right.
And it bugs me.
Right. Phil, you had some good comments. Give us a call at 1-888 Jurgs, or anybody else for that matter. He said that Putin is a dragon playing with children on the world stage. Okay, this is exactly what we're talking about. Is Republicans that are so far up Putin's ass, he looks like a cockroach.
Yeah, why? I mean, no one has yet to explain to me why they like Putin. They think he's pro-Christian. He's not. They made Christianity illegal. Essentially, you cannot speak about your faith outside of your house, period, in Russia. They are not pro-faith. They're not pro-religion. They're not freedom of religion. That's absolute BS that I hear from Trump supporters. Putin is, I think, understandably weaker than he pretends to be, but that doesn't mean he won't do something irrational to prove he's not weak.
Correct. Here's the other thing. He says Putin has been on a war footing since the Soviet Union collapsed. We talked about that.
That's true.
He is in for this, for the win at all costs. Correct. And he's going to lose everything. This is a game for him. Also correct. Your thinking represents why we are so screwed. More MAGA projection.
Well, and I think we're really screwed with the two people, again, to go back to Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Let's not talk about their not ability to string a sentence together, but I think both of them are kind of weak against both. Like, Biden's been better than Trump, although what's weird is that Trump's rhetoric versus what his administration actually did, he was actually very strong against Russia, but like his rhetoric wasn't. Like, Donald Trump, the man himself, like,
was he strong, or did he put off the inevitable to make himself look good?
No, I mean, I think his administration, the people he hired to do the stuff that he didn't care about, actually were stronger. There were more sanctions against Russia. His was more forceful against Russia than Obama's administration was, but his rhetoric isn't. And I think the rhetoric actually does matter in this case because it telegraphs what you're going to do or you're not going to do. I think the only upside to Trump as president for a second term would be that he's such a wild card that other leaders might go like, oh, we actually don't know what he's going to do.
See, that's the problem. We don't know what he's going to do either.
But
so
Reagan had Reagan had a little bit of that going. But I mean, I think that with Biden, everyone knows he's so feckless that they can get away with anything. And I think that's really what's enabled Russia and China and Iran to do what they're doing.
I always remember the Obama quote. What was it? Don't discount Biden to fuck things up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And also Biden's quote of, ISIS, the JV team and all these, you know what I mean? Like, I think Obama and Biden were both very Pollyannish in their foreign policy views of these people. I think they can just sit down and kumbaya with them. And I think that is proving that it's not true. I think the Afghanistan withdrawal specifically caused the rest of the world to notice that, like, you know what? Biden wants to avoid conflict at all costs. And so we can probably do whatever we want and keep skirting red lines and crossing them without consequences. And it's sort of true other than the funding of Ukraine.
I think that one thing we don't do enough is really understand, like, the history of communism, the fight between capitalism, American West, or the West, and communism, and the overarching nationalism that it created in communist countries that really look at the West as really being what screwed them on their growth to greatness. And if you see Xi Jinping's personal letters and stuff like that, they really resemble Putin's a lot, of how he wants to get the band back together of all of China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and so on and so forth, and how they look at the West and the things that the West has done to China, which historically was pretty bad. That they really look at it as and they're using that as a form of nationalism. And if you go into China right now, and this is one reason why I left, is over the years when I got there, it was Hu Jintao back in 2004 when I was in China, and when I left in 2017, the nationalism, the idea of nationalism and pride and ethnocentrism changed dramatically in China until they are now a very cohesive, in my opinion, very nationalist people that is getting geared up to do something. My personal thoughts of this, you can see it. This is the way they treat foreigners in China. You see that the
not
policies.
Even just foreigners, they're committing genocide right now on Chinese people. They're eliminating
the minorities.
Races. Yeah, I mean, they're Mongolian people, Uyghurs. They're moving into these other areas and they're taking over and they're trying to make it all
Han Chinese.
Yeah, Han Chinese, and that's it. And it's. I think that's the thing that we do not talk enough about, is that they've been laying this groundwork for decades.
Right.
Well, then how are they paying for it if their economy is sucking?
Well, I mean,
cheap labor, bro.
Yeah, I mean, slave labor. It helps if you can put people in slave camps and encampments, and I mean that's why it actually, when people call what's happening, when people say Israel is genocidal, I think it's an absolute softening of the word, and I think it's gross that people say that, because what it's actually happening in China, and I don't see protests on college campuses calling for the Uyghurs, which were actually in concentration camps and being sterilized and being forced into slave labor. It's wrong.
I want to push back. I'm not going to push back on that a little bit, but I do want to point out that that I really don't like that argument a lot, because. And you're not saying this, but this is part of the argument, is like, why are people protesting on the Israel Gaza thing? It's because the media put that to the forefront, right?
Yeah,
and
I agree.
and so a lot of people put that to the forefront, and you have a lot of students or people that are listening to the news going like, "Oh, this thing is happening and this is bad, and I don't like this thing,"
Yeah, I'm
or
only
"I like
talking about
this
the
thing."
term genocide. That's all I'm talking about is when
Sure,
they call it a
eh,
genocide.
sure. Again, and then people are, and then the same thing with people. Well, why aren't they doing the same thing with Sudan? Why aren't they doing the same thing with the Uyghurs? Why didn't they say anything when Myanmar and Burma or Myanmar
Right.
was and why don't they say anything with there or we could talk about Serbia, or we could talk about or Bosnia, or we could talk. There's so many different
Rwanda,
places,
they're everywhere. That happens all the time. Yeah.
and it didn't come to the American forefront. And yes, and I
Those,
understand what people.
those countries aren't the big threat that China can be.
And I understand that why, but we're talking about with Israel, Gaza now, and I understand why Israelis and Jewish people would say like this got to be some kind of anti-Semitic thing, because why this one all of a sudden, and we just got attacked. I understand that idea, but at the same time, can we start blaming the media for not telling the American people what's happening in these other places, and start instead of saying like, why are we talking about this one, and using that as a scapegoat of saying like, but all this other bad things is happening.
Right,
There's
but what
a
I'm
lot of bad
saying is
things
it's
happening that
not
we
a
wait, give me
genocide.
1 second. Let me
It's not a
finish up.
genocide.
Let me finish this up. I don't think it's your. I really don't think it's your or my or your place to call it what it is. But we can still have outrage of what we're seeing that's being highlighted. But the media is, I think, at fault because they're not showing us what else is going on out there. They are definitely picking sides. They are definitely playing some kind of weird kind of strategy card. And I wish that the American people knew better about the Uyghurs. They knew better about Sudan. They knew better about all the other things that were going on. And so we could have more of an enlightenment about what's happening around the world. And now we have this rage that is obviously directed to this one thing here. Why? Again, I think it's a little misdirection for something else, but you go for it.
I'm just saying I don't think
What
it's a genocide.
misdirection do you think it is?
I don't think it's fair to call it a genocide. I think that that's what's wrong. It's not that it's like, I'm not trying to do like false equivalency of saying, well, you call out this one, but not that one. I'm saying this is not a genocide, but all these other things are. And so you're labeling the thing that's not a genocide, and you're weakening the term for all these other things that are actually genocides.
Again, again, those genocides were labeled. You're calling it a genocide because it was labeled by somebody else a genocide. I think that it's our job to look at it, see what's happening, let them label it, and then we'll figure it out. But I don't think it's our job.
Definition, not by a number.
Right, but the legal definition of a
Exactly.
genocide is not happening in Gaza right now. It's not. There's no way you can make that work for me. I mean, you can look at like if they wanted to kill Arab people, why is 20% of their population Arab and they have the same rights as everyone else? Why are they trying to drop leaflets to say, hey, get out of the area? And why are they telegraphing their military strategies? Why? I'm not saying Israel's not made mistakes. They've got a 1 to 1.5 militant to civilian casualty ratio, and the UN and EU say that should be in normal war things, not even in urban environments, 1 to 9. So they've got a lower casualty count than all the. And I'm not saying war sucks. I wish 0 people had to die. I wish that was the case, but to call it a genocide is just absolutely, there's no facts that back that up. And I'm not saying you're calling it a genocide. I'm saying these campus protesters, and I even see this happening in articles where they don't push back on that claim. And it's, right. that is something that we, as the world, leaders and things like that, they can get together and call something a genocide if they think that the things have happened. But I've not seen any evidence that that's the case. It just seems like they're cherry picking, like, oh, well, because here's a group of people, it's this oppressor-oppressed narrative. That's really what it all boils down to, is that they think Israel's the oppressor and the oppressed are the Gazans. And it's, I just don't think that qualifies as a genocide. I think that we are weakening that term, just like we've weakened the term racism. I think there is real racism, but when you call someone racist for saying something that was like insensitive that they didn't realize, that cheapens the word, and it makes it not mean as much when we're dealing with like the people that were marching in Charleston saying Jews will not replace us. Like, no, that's actual racism, or the KKK or something like that. And I just think that we're weakening these words that should mean more than they do when we just throw them around all the time.
Agreed. I mean, yeah, not much you can. So Phil's back at it.
I've actually got to run to a doctor's appointment, a chiropractor, because my neck is killing me. But happy Friday.
Mine is too. Well, let's wrap it, guys. It's too late.
Right, well, here's Phil's.
Oh, let's see this last thing.
Again, we hate Putin. No, you don't.
The people that are arguing with me in the comments don't seem to hate Putin. They seem to be defending Russia and
currently the administration can't complete a full sentence. Have you listened to Trump on Wednesday? Go back and watch Fox News cut him off because he's stuttering.
I think most people are not diving, and the truth is all this stuff is very complicated, as Matt laid out, and most people are just picking the bullet points that they're hearing from their one guy potentially, and not really getting into that this is a way more nuanced, way more detailed, way more history than most people know. Most people, like I said, don't even know the history of Israel and Gaza and all that stuff. So it's like people should
thousands of years
a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. Thousands of years of history. And Russia's in the same situation, and China's in the same situation. Our nation is not even 250 years old yet, and China and Russia are much, much older. And I think that complicated history is. I'm not saying you need to know all of Russian history before you jump in on talking about Russia, but it'd be good to know some of the bullet points of the past. I think most people are just kind of ignorant to those facts, and then jump in and try to have these really hardcore lines in the sand where they're like, I'm anti-Ukraine because they're corrupt. Because that's the thing I hear all the time. Yeah, they've got a lot of corruption in their country, but like so do we. Does that mean if we get attacked, no one
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump are straight shooters?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's my point. Is that
I don't know. What is it? Unusual Whales just put out a chart of how many people are making money trading stocks on the war efforts. So
yeah,
that's totally cool, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, does that mean we, like, if they start attacking innocent people in America, that our allies shouldn't come to our defense because they be like, well, Congress is buying stock in Meta as they write a bill about TikTok being banned? Yeah, that's corrupt. But does that mean like the whole country is a loss at that point? I think that's a ridiculous argument. Anyway, I gotta go, guys. Happy Friday.
Yeah, same here. Happy
See
Friday.
Bye.
Great show again. Later.
From iHeart Podcasts.
What in the hell is going on in here?
Everyone has their limits.
I'd never confronted a situation like this.
The numbers were being inflated and lied about and conflated.
I just thought it was just a really terrible, immoral thing for him to do.
A line they won't cross.
I was stunned, and I just said to him, no.
We're killing people. What exactly are we doing here?
I remember him saying, in this 007 evil villain kind of way, this is the beginning of a process.
You may never have to face that decision. When you find yourself at that line,
thoughts racing, hearts racing, emotions are all over the place.
They could be harassed, they could be imprisoned, they could be killed.
Somebody needs to just, for once, give everybody the whole truth.
I'm like, this is evil.
And the only person who can sound the alarm is you.
She folded it up, put it in her pantyhose, and walked out of the building.
Yeah, I really am the world's dumbest criminal.
These are the whistleblowers.
I wasn't just going to sit silently by.
I was told you take your questioning black self and get it on up out of my facility because you're trouble.
The message is, if you are disloyal, if you speak out, you will pay.
This is what it's like when the president decides he wants to destroy you.
Bad things are going to happen to him. You're anti-American. You are a disgrace to our country. He should be prosecuted.
When power corrupts, conscience is the last line of defense.
Is it ever too late to do the right thing?
We talk about institutions, but they're really about individual people.
The responsibility drops in everybody's lap.
I'm Miles Taylor. The Whistleblowers premieres Thursday, July 13th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Check that out. That is actually from 2023. The series is actually over, but it's still very relevant. Like Miles says, you can get that wherever you get your podcasts, and we certainly recommend doing so. All right, gang, that is it. We will talk to you again. Well, you can hear part of this tomorrow on WDJY 99.1 FM in Atlanta. I've got to do some editing right now and get that to them. And then again on Monday morning, I think that may be when we'll play the part 2, which, how long did we go? 60, good 40 minutes. So we'll throw in some commercials somewhere and maybe finish it out with David Beckmeyer's Science Bites or something. That's it, gang. Have a great weekend. It is 1:38 Eastern, so well into an overtime for today. Keep talking, be safe, and let's see, let's get an outro put in here. There we go. See you next week.